Hi everyone, hoping you're all doing well. For the record, I would have preferred to have delivered this in person at some conference alongside many of you, but alas, someday soon I hope. I partook of this opportunity because of the draw of collaborating with many esteemed colleagues. And I do think that such a format offers the only way that we can begin grappling with anti-racist possibilities for our field. In fact, that's the heart of my argument today. And it's related to both a methodology and a mindset that involves outreach, dialogue, and coalition building within and beyond our immediate scholarly circles. And I really applaud the Keats-Shelley Association of America for supporting and sponsoring this long overdue initiative. I'd like to begin with a brief account of my journey to get here. Ever since my days as an undergraduate, I aspired to study and teach the works of writers like William Blake, William Wordsworth, and Percy Shelley. And I admit this because I always saw this ambition as part of my own narrative of resistance. Sure, like V.S. Naipaul and many others, I never saw daffodils in my hometown. And yes, it sounds terribly cliche, but it was the promise of that inward eye articulated in the fourth stanza of that poem, as well as the bridges between art, social action, and political justice that lured me in. Yes, as I likened the refinement of my own critical voice to that Wordsworthian inward eye, I saw things like my future as a scholar in the profession, and I'm happy to speak more about this. As some of you know, I am Hispanic, and my native language is Spanish. As a first-generation student who had no clue about navigating college, I enjoyed a privilege that my parents and grandparents could not. But I had to figure out a lot of stuff out on my own difficult journey. When I knew that I wanted to study literature, which was a privilege of course, I was often met with suggestions from family, instructors, and even mentors about specifically studying Hispanic writings and authors. Why not study José Martí or Borges or Márquez or Mistral? It was certainly very tempting, but I wanted a different and perhaps unanticipated path. I wanted to push against the expectations of those around me by studying British Romanticism. I know I sound like such a rebel, but for me, getting to the place where I am now as an instructor, an assistant professor of English, a child of immigrants who can now interrogate mind-forged manacles and corresponding breezes with my students, it represented a point of culmination that I for so long saw as my own mode of rebellion. I had to reassess this aspirational arc, however, when in grad school I engaged critical readings on canon formation, post-colonial theory on the producers and production of knowledge, and revisionary accounts by scholars such as Debbie Lee and Alan Richardson, and many others. It quickly became clear to me that most versions of Romanticism that I had either encountered or sought out failed to do justice to a period in which peoples interacted in multilingual, multiracial, cross-cultural spaces. And then, as I look back on what may very well be my own spot of time, especially the moment I read Susan Buck-Morss on Hegel and Haiti, I reconsidered my place in this world of Romanticism. As an outsider with perhaps a growing sensitivity to things on the outside, I began trying to gravitate towards spaces of alterity and hybridity, where the silences and neglected authors and texts of our period lay hidden. To invoke Mary Louise Pratt's work, I began seeking out the contact zones, the interstices and the lacunae that all became material for molding some of my own scholarly work, even as I still continued to read and collaborate with Wordsworth, and I'm employing that name metonymically, of course. In the end, I found myself fortuitously positioned to attempt bringing both the occluded and the included into conversation. And I see the work toward anti-racist Romanticism operating in a very similar vein. I am proposing a collective stance that ultimately disavows the detrimental legacies of Romanticism. And to be clear, disavowal for me does not mean rejecting the term, but thinking through how shifting and evolving understandings of Romanticism are still possible. I think we should continue to use, even embrace the term, by adopting an inward eye that looks critically upon itself and acknowledges that when we call ourselves romanticists, we place a tradition that stems back to the Middle Ages front and center. The heyday of the medieval romance, a time of monstrous mummeries, as Byron amusingly suggested, coincided with disquieting events. The extermination of Jews, violent campaigns against Muslims, the enslavement of Romani peoples, to name but a few. And when the medieval romance is, etymologically speaking, regarded as the fountainhead of the name of our field, it calls to mind a feudal social structure that for centuries reinforced elitist, racist, sexist, misogynistic, and heteronormative forms of Eurocentrism. We could therefore see Romanticism in a helpful light, I contend, as a reminder that it might at times still be attached to problematic notions, including perceptions of literature that was complicit with empire building, which was in turn supported through the labor of enslaved Black persons. And yet, we must also note that many of the writers that we study understood this and tried to reimagine, for example, the tradition and genre of romance in their own day. Byron offers compelling case studies of evolving notions of romance, and Gerard Cohen-Vrignon tracks this very nicely in his book, Radical Orientalism. And we in our community can continue enacting a version of this very methodology today by reevaluating and redefining the priorities and possibilities of our common imagination. At a recent talk at NYU, our colleague Manu Chander noted how he still buys into the radical commitments of Romanticism, especially when he teaches a poem like The Mask of Anarchy and brings in its political utility and currency in the hands of someone like Gandhi. This is a great example of what I see as the necessary, even pressing, radical inclusivity of our times. A vision for discovering new contact zones that might include Big Six writers, but also encourage diversification of our critical conversations and syllabi in order to decenter those writers' predominance. In doing so, we can commit to representing the demographics of the many authors in our period as well as of our students. It can include teaching texts by writers and scholars of color, and perhaps telling the story of the Age of Revolution through the incredible accounts of Haiti and Spanish America and beyond. I think the Bigger Six website, which was designed and is maintained by the wonderful and awesome Diana Koretsky, is a great resource and model, and many of these kinds of sites need to exist to make the process for us seem possible and within reach. And here's what might be most important. We need to support and applaud each other along the way for the big and little wins, all things in between. And even when we make mistakes, we need to help each other in kind ways. We might very well be a dying field, and so let's all come together and cheer each other on. Who else but us will do the work? Also, one more thing. I may not have it all right, and I welcome anyone to come and speak with me beyond the events in this series. I think that would be wonderful, and that's the way forward. Romanticism, in my view, is alive and strong, especially if we reimagine and rearticulate our scholarly and pedagogical goals by making anti-racism one of our primary collective goals. I want to thank David Siegler, Andrew Burkett, and the Keats-Shelley Association of America for organizing this wonderful series, and I look forward to learning alongside all of you throughout this process.